Hey everyone, we're back. Hope everyone's having a good day. No tea again today. I do have this like fizzy water. I do like it a lot. It's the last I have though, so I'll have to savor it. Hope everyone's having a good day. A little bit less heavy than what we were talking about yesterday and all that. In this case, it's kind of like internet excitement type stuff going on. Uh, there was kind of a informal debate between two rather well-known figures. Cenk, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Maybe it's Jank. I've heard a lot of pronunciations, and I don't. I hope I'm not pronouncing his name incorrectly. He is one of the hosts of TYT, the Young Turks, a rather popular and successful YouTube channel. Does a lot of news stuff with a left-wing bent, which is kind of cool. I don't. I assume he's one of the like founders and one of the owners or whatever. I'm not exactly sure, but he's definitely one of the hosts alongside Anna Kasparian, you know. And then he was talking with Hasan Piker, his nephew, but also the biggest left-wing YouTube channel that there is. Millions of subscribers, or like on Twitch or whatever, or maybe sorry, I guess it's like followers or whatever, subs. On Twitch, maybe not millions, but like huge following. Very popular guy. As I understand, they're going to be talking about trans issues now. As far as I know, Anna Kasparian, and this is why I mentioned her earlier, took kind of went Joker mode when it came to trans stuff, kind of recently, and Cenk is seemingly on board with that. But I'm a little surprised at the Young Turks being a little hesitant, to put it politely, with their trans support. And so, by contrast, my guess is Hassan is more supporting of the trans community. I'm not actually sure. I don't watch Hassan myself. I hear things about him every now and again. Uh, but my guess is he'll be more on board and in favor, because it's supposed to be a debate, and or at the very least it's stated as like they're debating, and it's my understanding that Cenk at the moment is not terribly supportive of trans stuff. This all like there's like a long, well, I shouldn't say a long history. There's a history like a lot of convoluted stuff happening, like Anna Kasparian taking issue with the term birthing people and be like, well, we're women. It's like, oh, okay, but birthing people refers to more people than just women. It refers to birthing people, right? Trans men can also give birth. It's not just a reference to women. You know, this whole thing. And then like got a lot of pushback, and so got mad about it. And it's all, and then so on and so forth. The sense I got from Jank was that I'm gonna keep pronouncing his name differently so that I maximize my possibilities of getting it right, and simultaneously guarantee that I will have gotten it wrong many times. So, it's the best of both worlds, really, when you think about it. But the sense I got is that he's loyal to his friend and to his coworker, and a lot of that, a lot of people, shoot, we all have this. If your friend takes a position, they're kind of ride or die for something, and you're trying to get their back, you start to like agree with them. And I'm not going to say that means it's not an authentically held belief. I don't want to disrespect him and say he doesn't believe the things he believes authentically. It just means like, sometimes the cause is a little bit less internal than we'd like to believe. So we'll see. So it should be interesting. Now, Hasan doesn't really do debates, according to him. But that said, he debates people all the time. It's very weird. He like hates debates, but also argues with people. I don't know. I think there's a sense that to be a debate, you need a moderator and structured speaking times and all the, or like. But then, a lot of the things people call debates that he would take issue with is just like the screaming matches. I don't know. I don't know what people mean when they say debate a lot, especially if they're opposed to it in concept. Just because there are a lot of things that get lumped in. It's like, but you do a lot of that. If you invite someone to your stream and then talk with them and start arguing about stuff, you're debating. maybe you could say it's arguing or whatever, but like you're debating. It's on your stream as or in his YouTube channel. The title is that Hasan debates his uncle. So he thinks it's a debate. I don't know. Maybe he's changed his view on this. Maybe it's not as hard and fast as I was led to believe. As I say, I didn't hear it from him. More accurately, I heard it from like clips of him, and I don't imagine he'd disagree so so much that he'd be like, no, these are completely out of context. I do like debate or whatever. Um, but maybe it wasn't as strong as it seemed from what I've seen. So it doesn't really matter, I guess. We'll just we'll watch and we'll see what they have to say here. Now, of course, this is going to be a lot less formal, as you can tell. They're just at Hasan's place, or I assume this is at his house. Uh, Maybe he has a studio elsewhere, but it's just at where he has a bunch of stuff in the background. You can see it. It's like it's his place. Now that said, it's also not like a home field advantage thing. Cenk's his uncle. He's probably been there a lot. As I understand, Hasan is puts a lot of importance on his family, and I think that's a really cool and good value to have. So I would have to imagine Cenk has been there a lot. Their family, maybe not tons and tons just because of schedules and stuff. People are busy, but I have to imagine like this is a comfortable place for them both to be, and so it's a lot more relaxed. It's a lot like we're just like talking, hang out. It's very different, of course, when you're arguing with someone that's sitting next to you and arguing with someone through the internet. Obviously, they're both content creators, so like performance is not a thing that we're getting away from, but the performance is different. You don't have that sense that like you're talking to an object. This is a thing where I think I think it's something that people are aware of but maybe don't factor in enough is subtle objectification. Now, objectification is treated as very pernicious, and I mean it a little less so than it's usually used. Just in the sense of like, if you're writing an email, emotionally, it feels a lot like you're typing to your computer. You're not typing to a person. You're talking to an object. And no matter how much you tell yourself this is a human being is on the other end of this and they're going to see this, it doesn't feel the same. And you can mitigate that only so much. There are varying levels to which this occurs. I've noticed in some people that like with phone calls, especially with like customer service, this is what makes it very easy to be very rude, just in the sense of like, well, I'm yelling at my phone. You're not a human. Like it's kind of like a lizard brain kind of thing of like, intellectually you're talking to a human, but it feels like you're yelling at an object. And so there's an amount to which like online debates are going to have that. We shouldn't see that here. My guess is this is going to be really amicable. That said, being amicable doesn't mean it won't get heated, and I kind of hoping it does, so we can see that like when this debate's over, they're still going to be like, all right, your family, give you a hug, I'll catch you next time. Come over for dinner on Saturday or whatever. Like they're not going to leave hating each other, and that's good. Like to be clear, that's good. They don't see eye to eye, and there are different things that you can get out of a debate. This is one of those things that I think can be useful. It's overstated, but it can be used to change people's minds. Even the person you're arguing with. Now, often the debates that we've seen in the past, you're never going to convince the other person. And like, okay, sure. But at some level, we don't want to just look around and say everyone is locked into the things they believe and you can't convince anyone of anything. Obviously you can. And how do you do that? Well, there are a lot of ways, but sometimes arguing with their positions can do it. Less often when there's an audience, but one of the cool things about being in a circumstance like this, where you're just in Hasan's house, it feels a lot less like there's an audience. It feels a lot more like you're just talking to each other and not for a show. Even though that is a thing, and like that's probably in the back of their mind. And so I'm hoping this will be a cool instance of seeing what it looks like when you just talk to a person and be like, hey man, I disagree with what you think and I'd like to talk about it with you. And we shouldn't expect like by the end of this they're going to have radically different positions. It's not like if Cenk argues really well that Hasan's going to be like, you know what, you're right, I'm a transphobe now. I don't imagine that's where we're going here. Um, but little impacts, and you never know what's going to change someone's mind. Sometimes it is an argument. Sometimes it's a thing that you say as a premise to an argument that is completely, completely irrelevant, completely out of context for the thing that changes their mind. Uh, all sorts of things can happen, and it's good to talk to people. It's good to like. I'd rather have allies, right? Wouldn't it be better if there were more people in the world that were supportive of trans people, And one way of doing that is convincing people. That happens in a lot of ways, and different people require different amounts of convincing, but also there's different impacts. Cenk he's a media host on a very popular network. I don't know if you could call it a network. A very popular organization. It'd be really cool if he were more pro-trans rights, So obviously, I'm assuming what Hasan's side is and also on it. But it's I don't like the idea that like it's too late for people. This comes up a lot on the left in particular because there's a lot of people who, for one reason or another, were alt-right and don't want to be anymore, or maybe don't believe in the same things anymore. Actually, we encountered a great example some time ago when we were watching that Hunter Avallone debate. Hunter Avallone used to be a very vocal right-winger. I don't think I'd go so far as to say it was all right, but his channel was a right-wing channel, and he was on board with a lot of the anti-feminist stuff, the anti-trans stuff, a bunch of this stuff, and he realized that he doesn't believe any of that anymore. And to his credit, publicly did an about-face, and now spends his time arguing for things, that I personally think are good. And it's great that he did that, but there's a difficulty. A lot of people don't want to accept Hunter Avallone as if your political beliefs are a thing that require acceptance. A lot of people want to ostracize him anyway, say he's still bad or whatever. And I don't know. I'm happier that he's arguing in favor of trans rights now. I'm happier that he's arguing in favor of better policy than he used to. I'm glad he's no longer an anti-feminist. That's good. I don't know. That's a good thing. And, this isn't a matter of forgiveness. It's not a matter of, oh, I feel hurt by what he did and I don't know if I can. It's not about that. It's about what he's doing in the world. And the more good that can be done in the world, how can that be a bad thing? Even if it's being done disingenuously, by the way, even if people are doing good things for like grifty bucks, as if that's a thing. Okay. I don't even think I mind that, as long as the good stuff happens. Now, the problem, of course, is there's a risk, right? If people are only doing it because they're getting paid to do good things, then as soon as they don't, they might do bad things. And that's the worry, right? But the worry is the bad things. And so I'm really hoping that we can get somewhere here. I don't know if we will. I also saw this framed previously. I was going out of my way not to watch videos about this. And I saw this, they were at the TY2 studio, so I was a little surprised they're here. Maybe I found the wrong video. I hope not. I mean, it is about this. It is about the right top subject. It's from 5 days ago. I'm pretty sure this is the thing. All right. So that all being said, let's watch and try not to get too distracted by the stuff that Hasan has in the background, like the Bernie cardboard cutout and like the Obama picture with the Queen with her eyes X'd out. Try not to get too distracted. We're here for the conversation.
Pretend that I brought it up. No, you brought it up.
Okay, it does get
hit.
hit.
You made it a
Awesome.
giant issue. And you're the one hurting the progressive cause and the trans rights cause. We win on every goddamn issue on trans rights. Why are you going and dying on the hill that no one agrees with you on? You're going to ruin
really
trans rights
that this is
on other issues.
What happened.
Okay. We're going to lose. Because
obviously, this is like a preview, so I can't really speak too much to what he's saying. But it is kind of interesting where he's coming from. Maybe this is going to be a little. Maybe the dynamic here is not what I expected, because he was even talking about like winning on the aspect of trans rights. It seems like that's the thing he wants. Now, there are some people who are politically in favor of trans rights but like philosophically opposed to the underlying premises that lead to like trans acceptance or whatever. It's rare, and I'm glad they're at least politically on board. Uh, Maybe that's what's going on, or maybe I'm just incorrect entirely. Maybe Cenk is the pro-trans person here. I don't know.
You're being so extreme. And then every ally you
we should
have,
try to
you're
minimize
like,
our assumptions about their beliefs.
I'm going to be more pure than them, so I'm going to burn their bridge down. I don't want any allies.
He's losing his shit here.
Oh my god, I'm gonna lose my mind.
It's a Cenk already did.
All right. Cenk Uygur is here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a classic uncle nephew face off, as I have talked about already. For those of you who don't know, Cenk wrote a book. This is in the face. Cenk wrote a book called Justice is Coming.
Backing up.
Wrote a book.
I'm hearing the name again.
In the face. Cenk wrote a book called Justice is Coming, How Progressives Are Going to Take Over the Country and America is Going to Love It, which is, I mean, I'm a very cynical person. I don't think, I'm a very pessimistic person. I don't
appreciate
think it's happening anytime soon, but maybe you'll make an argument for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I don't know about if I'm pessimistic in the way that Hasan is describing here, but, I mean, maybe that's wrong, but I'm hopeful. It'd be really cool if good things happen sooner rather than later. We should hope and try for that, and if that's not possible, then we try for good things on a longer scale, right? As long as we can make good things happen, as long as people are better off, right? YouTube, please, I beg you. Come on. Damn it. Also, please try not to be distracted by how overwhelmingly attractive Hasan is.
But yeah, we're going to talk about your book, and we're going to talk about another thing that you literally didn't tell me while you were announcing it, which is that you're running for president. And of course, I'm going to ask you why or even how. But that's it. That's those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about.
Asking how. Is Cenk able to run for president? Hasan was born in Turkey. I don't know if Cenk was also, or if he was born in the U.S. or anything. I have no idea. Maybe that's an issue. I don't know.
Any of that though. Let's start off with the Democrats actually doing something that is unheard of, unimaginable, which is showing backbone.
All smart progressives are going in the same exact direction, right? Yeah. So
I've been on that direction.
Yeah, so
I think they're talking about a story I didn't really cover because I wasn't sure that I had a unique take to talk about it with. But this is I think they're talking about the ousting of McCarthy as Speaker of the House. There was a motion made by like Matt Gaetz or whatever, and Democrats, in a rare instance of, as Hasan said, backbone, as others have described accurately, political savviness, we're like, yeah, this is really bad for your party, so we're on board, let's go. And like every Democrat was like, yep, get them out of here. And so they only needed a few Republicans on board, and it causes a lot of chaos in the Republican Party, which is pretty good given that they're anti-democracy, pro-fascism, so on and so forth. I'm glad that the reactionary party is destabilized somewhat. I would prefer them to be politically irrelevant, but we take what we can get.
Host Anna's obsessed with the labor movement. Totally believes that's the answer. Nina Turner, who's another host on our network, just announced today that she set up a new group with Chris Smalls to back the labor movement and to even get funding for the labor movement whenever they go on strike, etc. And so that's what pushed FDR. That's what's going to push the next generation. Everything is trending.
We're talking about it so vaguely. I don't even know.
The only thing is we can't,
assuming a familiarity,
defeat from the jaws of victory. And there's two icebergs ahead. And so I'm not Pollyannish. I see the icebergs probably better than anybody else does. And I'm really worried about it, okay? One is the progressive movement, honestly, and this is where you and I can begin to disagree,
starts to say
getting too radical and too away from what most Americans want. And the second iceberg...
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so look, saying things like all sports leagues, including professional ones, has to allow trans women. They don't have a choice, etc.
Nobody
pulls
says
at like
this,
2%.
by the way.
You say, hey, it's a moral issue. It's really important.
There is
These
a moral
sports
issue
leagues are
about
like the
allowing
most
trans people
important thing in the
sports,
whole
but
wide world.
Do you think it's
solution
actually a significant issue? Do you think
isn't-
that is a significant issue or a driver of the conversation? Or
So-
Yeah, it's really not that big of a deal in the long. Like the sports thing is a thing people only care about because it's a thing they can exclude trans people from. Nobody cares about. Well, first of all, this isn't an issue in men's sports, right? If trans men want to participate in men's sports, no one should. There's no even a even pseudo rational position against that, right? In the same way, like, why should it be the case that, like, if a cis woman wants to participate in a men's sport, that she shouldn't be allowed to? If she's able to, or in the case of the trans man, if he's able to, okay, who cares? The big distinction between the gender divisions in sports is the idea is, well, there are biological differences between men and women, and so, like, in a lot of sports, men have inherent advantages, so we'll separate the genders so that more people can participate, we can have more competition, so on and so forth. And that women aren't like locked out unless they're in the like top of the top, kind of thing is the idea. That said, some of these issues get a little more get pretty hazy with trans people. If a trans person if a trans woman has hormone blockers and then never experiences male puberty and then goes on hormones and experiences female puberty, they're pretty indistinguishable biologically from cis women. So there's that. But then there's also like, well, if the point is to increase participation and competition, excluding a portion of the population seems kind of antithetical to that. Maybe there's a solution that hasn't been presented yet. I'm not aware of one that like solves all of these that solves all of these issues. But to merely say, well, therefore trans people can't compete, I think is a problem. There should be a way where a person is able to compete. I mean, we have like the Paralympics for people with disabilities. The point of that is to allow competition and participation of people who might not otherwise be able to. I'm not saying there should be a trans league, but what I'm saying is that we can figure out solutions to allow the maximum number of people who are interested in trying to compete to do so fairly. So and like Hasan's right though, like, is this really a big deal? Like if like at the grand scale of things,
weaponized by Republicans with
like
some
trans people would much rather probably have access to the legal rights, legal protections, medical rights, so on and so forth, that go along with it, that they've been seeking, than being allowed to participate in sports. It's way less pressing, YouTube is going to be a problem today. I don't know why. This might be a situation of, first one, then the other. The sports thing, I don't know. It's a complicated and like kind of low impact issue, especially in comparison to like, hey, maybe there shouldn't be housing discrimination. Like that seems like a big deal, a much bigger deal, in fact, than the sports thing. YouTube, why? I can see that it's loaded. Why? Oh my god, I don't know why my computer's
liberals taking the bait and then having a conversation about it instead of being like, fuck off, nobody cares about this, stop talking about this immediately.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what the right wing does. They weaponize every single issue. What I'm trying to get progressives to do is stop falling in the trap. So the minute they say it,
but do you think,
our side comes out and goes, no, this is the most important issue.
Yeah,
and anyone
I mean,
who
I kind of
disagrees
agree
is
with
a
what he's
Nazi.
saying here. That is a problem, right? Like the culture war bait stuff of like, I just went on at length about the trans sports thing, and it really isn't that important. But the problem, of course, is that there are ramifications to this. In several states, there have been bills proposed, some passed, about like, okay, well, therefore, high school girls that want to participate in sports have to submit records of their menstruation history, and like children have to, who want to do sporting events, have to have to go through genital inspections. Like, this is not just unreasonable, but it is a mechanism that allows for abuse. A genital inspection seems like the most obvious way to get child sexual abuse cases. That'd be like how you would try to legalize. Like, it seems like it's suggested by someone who just wants to legalize child sexual abuse, kind of thing. And that makes it a problem. I'm much more concerned about preventing the right from doing stuff like that than I am in, like, screw it, anyone can participate in any sports league, whatever. But of course, Cenk also didn't put it as, it didn't mention that it's coming from the right and the left is responding to this. He says it's like the left is, or like there are people who are, in favor of the, like, whatever, all sports, no categories, whatever, like how he put it, He acted as though it was coming from the left, but of course, no, this started with transphobes pushing back where they can. And the fight against genital inspections for children,
You just called 98% of the country Nazis.
Okay.
What are you doing? You're alienating voters like
no one
crazy.
called anyone a Nazi.
Do you think that organizers on the ground, both trans and cis, that are or members of labor unions are even using this as a talking point in any meaningful capacity, or is it simply reactionary Republicans bringing this up because they tried and unsuccessfully failed to push the anti-trans button with bathroom bills?
For the fact that they
honestly, like I said, I haven't seen much of Hasan. That was a very impressive and concise way of applying the appropriate context of, like, is this really that important? Is it more important than this thing? Got it. Very, very good. Like, I don't know. I think you did a great job of putting the complaint in context. Like, it really isn't a big deal. Why are you wasting your time on it? Like, what? I shouldn't say wasting your time on it, but, like, why are you so concerned about it? Inordinately? I'm looking for the word. I can't think of it. Like, this was the first iceberg you thought was in the way. Like, is it really that big a deal? Why are you so focused on it? You're the one bringing it up, remember? Sometimes I pause and YouTube has no issues. Sometimes I pause and this happens, even if I only pause for a couple of seconds.
Pass all those bills, which I despise. I hate those
Hold on.
bills.
Let me just clarify something.
I'm sure
here.
he does.
In the lead up to the 2016 election, you had the North Carolina bathroom bill that was anti-trans, right? You have to have the gender assigned at birth be the bathroom that you go to.
That totally failed.
Okay,
That's right.
that failed. That was so objectively a failure that Donald Trump came out and said, I don't give a fuck where Caitlyn Jenner shits as long as she's shitting in Trump Tower, right? Something along those lines.
But
I'm
then
paraphrasing.
he tried to ban them from the military.
Hold on. Let me finish.
That was also unpopular. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me finish. Okay? Yeah, he tried to ban trans people from the military. That was also unpopular. So, what did Republican interest groups do? The family, moral family, Christianity fundamentalist groups. What did they do? They went back to the drawing board and they looked for a reasonable sidestep that would still be anti-trans, that would open the door to anti-trans conversations.
He's completely right here.
That they could push for that was more popular. What did they find? They found that Americans love the concept that is bullshit, meritocracy. What is the most meritocratic process in the entire country, maybe in the world? Sports. Americans love sports.
Now, of course, that's not true. No, I don't think Hasan believes that that's accurate. He's describing the thought process. But, of course, sports is also not completely meritocratic. At a certain level, like, taller people, for example, are going to do better at, like, I don't know, the high jump or whatever. There's nothing you can't become taller. You are the height you are. If you receive proper nutrition and whatever growing up, like, you'll reach whatever height your DNA allows or whatever. But you're not gonna, if you are 5'8", you can't become 6'8". That's not a thing you can do. There's not any merit to that. This is, of course, why we have certain divisions of, like, well, it would be kind of unfair to expect more from someone than they're literally capable Um, but then on top of this is also like this kind of thought process is also how we got the pushback. I shouldn't even say pushback. The for the anti-drag show fervor. It was okay, we failed at the trans bathroom stuff. We failed at this. Let's try pushing on this other thing. And, drag performances are a thing that most people at the very least are unfamiliar with. And so it becomes a little bit easier to be like, isn't it weird? Shouldn't you be mad about this? And then you lump it in with the whole LGBTQ community, even though drag performance doesn't necessarily have to be LGBT. Like someone can cross dress without being trans or gay or whatever. Like drag performers tend to be pretty supportive of LGBT stuff. So like okay, but like it's kind of weird. That connection isn't inherent, but of course they lump it in because like look, it's even deviant or whatever. They're trying to push back on degeneracy as a concept, and they're just taking any shot they can. And so I agree completely with Hasan. Like yes, they failed and failed and failed, and so they're like oh they found a thing that people are a little bit more open to. Let's push hard against the sports thing. Like that's a big deal, or like it's a thing that's happening. There are John Oliver has a really great bit. Well, several great bits about this. One of them, when he pointed out, I think it was in Utah, or so there was some state where there were more laws on the books than there were trans athletes or would-be trans athletes. I think there was like, I think in one state there were laws about this stuff, and there was one person who was trans and wanted to compete. Laws for one person. Just be like, you specifically cannot do the sports. It's ridiculous. But of course, it's just, get a foothold anywhere so they can start stripping rights more and more. Well, we've already taken away the rights to sports stuff, so let's take the bathroom thing away. And then, maybe they don't need housing protections, and, maybe a gas chamber would be appropriate. Like, I know I'm doing a little bit of the slippery slope here, but that's how these things go.
And Americans believe that meritocracy is real, and it's especially real in sports. So they changed the narrative away from trans people can't pee and poo in the fucking bathrooms to trans people want to destroy sports. It was simply just another way to attack trans people, which is precisely why I think a lot of people correctly looked at that and went, why the fuck are we talking about this? This is ultimately marginal. You just want to fucking eliminate trans people from public spaces. And I have never given an ounce of legitimacy to that argument, despite what public polling says, because the reality is no one gives a fuck about it. Let me tell you something that's really more important than public polling, however.
In fact, this is a long-standing thing. It was wild to me to watch the hysteria ramp up surrounding trans women in women's sports, because, it's been a long-standing joke that people do not care about women's sports. But now suddenly Republicans care. Last week you were making a joke about how the WNBA isn't real sports or whatever. But now you care desperately about the integrity of the competition. They don't, of course, right? It's just about hating the minority. Well, I was worried that we wouldn't have enough to chew on in this conversation here, but if YouTube keeps this up, we'll end up going for quite a while. It's only about a half hour that they're talking, but if it takes this long to load, we'll be at it for like 4 hours today. Got a lot to go through. Look at this riveting entertainment. I don't know why this happens. It's super rare. It seems to only happen when I'm streaming, so maybe it's a bandwidth issue. But oh my.
Because you brought up...
So far, I don't even see where we disagree.
Okay, so you brought up state legislatures, Republicans passing incredibly, horrifyingly
I love the little dog that
psychotic anti-trans bills.
Yeah.
Okay?
Very cute.
And they're passing this. Yet there is no viable single-issue voter out there that is, desiring these anti-trans bills. Although, if you ask Americans directly about what do you think about a 14-year-old trans girl participating in a swim meet, they might say 56% might say fuck that's wrong, we shouldn't do that. But the reality is there isn't any real momentum on the ground for anti-trans shit. Okay, Voters do not give a fuck about trans people overall. The overwhelming majority of voters actually have apathy for trans people. They just don't care about it because they think that there's no trans people in their lives whatsoever. Republicans, however, have kept on pushing the anti-trans button over and over again and made it their major fucking talking point.
Yeah, that's right. Completely correct.
That has yielded horrifyingly bad results for them. Yep. And instead of like fucking assassinating,
even the Republican Party is like over it. There have been polls done of like Republicans are saying, hey, we should talk about trans stuff less. DeSantis supporters are like, hey, stop talking about the woke stuff, even though that's been like the thing, the talking point of his campaign. Even Republicans are over it, the voting base, that is. But of course, it's, you know, to rile the base, because the base, the bigots, are the ones who get stoked up into this fervor, and they can get a lot out of those people. We saw Jan 6, you know, well, these people do act. I don't know. Damn it. I thought I had paused briefly enough. I don't know. Sometimes if I pause briefly, it's okay. I don't know why this happens. You can see it's loaded. Or I don't know if you can see. It's kind of small. Well, anytime it pauses like this, feel free to let me know how your day is going.
Rufo, for example, who's one of the leading guys here at the Manhattan Institute that was like doing the CRT stuff, doing the anti-trans stuff. Instead of going, dude, what the fuck are you doing? You ruined our midterm chances when Biden had a historically bad economy, when a red tsunami was supposed to happen. That was a major failure on their part, one that actually has led to Kevin McCarthy's ouster as the speaker right now, a domino effect of like the Republican Party imploding in and of itself, partially because the only thing that they have been looking for, the only thing that they have, the only tangible policy position is just increasing the dial of transphobia, but there's not enough people on the ground who are demanding it. And those who are demanding it are increasingly more psychopathic, which is pushing away normal fucking Republican voters who are just like, I just want tax cuts, man. Like, I'm racist, sure, but like, the fuck's going on? Like, I don't give a shit about this. Like, why are you talking about dismembering children's genitals all the fucking time? You sound like a psycho. They're getting outrage fatigue, and it has demonstrably been a failure.
Fatigue. That's interesting.
And
I
that's
hadn't
part
heard
of
that
the reason
before,
why you don't see Trump talking too much about wokeness or trans people. He like brings it up every now and then in his commentary, but it is far less than Ron DeSantis, wouldn't you say?
Does not
who is
shut up
an
about
objectively
it.
less popular candidate.
Yeah. DeSantis is not doing well at all.
With the exception of Trump and DeSantis thing, which we can get into, I actually agree with everything you said. So now let me give it to you from my perspective and why I'm concerned about it. So number one, Republicans bring this up because they're fishing and fishing. All their positions are deeply unpopular. So they're fishing for one position that they could finally get some sort of popularity on, right? So they dig all the way down to
and part of the issue, of course, with like
sports
Republicans
at the high school level,
and why they have to do this thing is because the things they actually want are bad for most people. You know, lower corporate tax rate, higher, like worse conditions, like worse availability of Medicare, less availability of like less freedom of movement of like immigration or whatever. All these things are like actively bad for people, and it would make their lives materially worse. So they like sometimes they try to get people, trick people into being on board for the things that are opposed to their interests. There are a lot of poor people who want the corporate tax rate to go down for some reason. But then sometimes it's just, well, what if we find the minority you hate and get you to scream alongside us about how they should be put to death or whatever, and then while you're voting for us, I guess I might as well do the things that make your life worse.
And they get over 70% saying, okay, no meritocracy, we shouldn't do that, right? So if at that point you and I agree, like we fight back when they propose a bill, and we do the best we can, and we aggressively make the case that you just made and that I make all the time on the air, right? And then we're okay with it, and everybody would agree. The country is in favor of trans rights, okay? So, but in the midst of these conversations, one of the things that happens is, okay, on air, I say, okay, you're asking, fine. I think at the high school level, trans girls should be able to participate with biological girls.
I hate that
because
why do you talk about that at all beyond how?
Because it comes up because
no,
there's a bill.
No,
I'm fighting against the bill.
Okay, but why do you talk about it beyond it being a distraction, perfectly cooked up? Because you said you agree with me. Why do you talk about it beyond it being a fucking bill that is laughably unpopular, so unpopular that like incredible.
It's not so unpopular that it didn't pass in all the red states.
Wait, what?
The trans bills that passed, not about bathrooms, but about sports and all that horse crap.
But none of those bills were passed with popular support.
Right.
Cenk.
I know they're passed by Republican legislators, and the Republican legislators are appeasing their base.
Okay.
And their base is maniacal,
No,
and their
not.
base wants it.
No, they're not.
That
That you and I are entirely
Okay,
incorrect.
so they go
Not everything.
pushing
Yeah,
that-
that's something. There's a bit of a disconnect. There's a kind of. I mean, Cenk is much more politically educated to like fall into the trap I'm about to lay out. So that's probably not what's happening. But the thing that very often happens is that people will like go, okay, well, because it's a representative democracy, the representatives are doing what their constituents want. It's not really a thing. That's not always like the whole point of a representative democracy is that the constituents might not understand or know what the best thing is for them, and so this person should be looking out for their interests, if not, even though they might not necessarily be doing exactly what they want. This seems at the very least similar to that inclination of like, no, just because an elected representative does a thing doesn't mean that that's what their constituents wanted them to do. They might have voted them in because they were like promising, I don't know, being tough on crime or something, and then while they're at it, they're doing the trans stuff. There's not so direct a connection between what the representative does and what the people want them to do. This is why you need additional polling. I mean, I don't know. Cenk should definitely know that, but it's weird that he's lining up the connection between they're doing it because their constituents want it. Maybe he thinks that their constituents do want it. Like maybe he's seen like polling data or something, and so he's like skipping the middleman or something like that. But that direct connection, I don't think is really there. And it seems like Hasan is pushing back on it. Yeah, I don't know. It seems it's a weird argument. I wouldn't expect Cenk to make. I haven't seen much of him either, but he's a smart guy who's very well educated on political stuff. Like the really basic mistake that I laid out, I would expect him not to make, kind of thing. So I don't have a great explanation for that argument because I don't. Like, it seems weird that he would believe.
And in that conversation, I say, hold on, let me finish. Okay. I say at some point, look, my real opinion is at the professional level. Yes, of course the leagues get to make their own decision. And sometimes, yes, trans women have an advantage, and the league is allowed to say, no, we're not going to allow it. Okay? So what happens next? Every single person that I know in mainstream media saw that what they perceive as a progressive community.
Oh, you want to help with what?
Then called me a Nazi. Then they go, okay, progressives are lunatics. I'm writing all of them off, right? Are you kidding me? Because somebody's had like this microscopic difference of opinion with like the most radical end of the progressive base. They're right-wing pivot, Republican, Nazi. Well, okay, you guys sound nuts.
Mm-hmm. I don't really see
do
that. Like that.
You think I disagree. So what?
Right? Mainstream media literally called you a bestiality-loving horsefucker when you tried to run for.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not, Jaden. If you want to like join my Discord, we can start there. It doesn't really need moderation at the moment, but I'll keep you in mind when we get to that point. I appreciate the offer. My Discord, you can see in my description down there. Should be a link to it. Let me know if that doesn't work.
For office in California, you think they needed the fucking? You think they needed like 11 trans people with anime avatars on Twitter calling you a Nazi to be like
on a platter.
That's crazy.
And
they have material issues
that
I'm gonna pause this and
much larger.
They have
that also cost us, and it makes it look like we are extreme when in reality 2/3 of the country's on our side. Take the fucking win. Take the win. So here's another one, and this one I don't know how you're gonna light up on this one.
No, this
defund the police. It's a terrible slogan. Okay. A terrible idea.
We're moving away from other talking points. Let's get back to the one issue that we were talking about. My perspective is that they have every interest to fuck you every single time. Mainstream media does. All right, try this because of their underlying material interest in defending the corporate oligopoly structure that we have. This is who funds them. This is how people rise into positions of power in the media infrastructure. You've been a part of this already personally. You've seen it happen to you at MSNBC. So like, there is no reason why they're not looking at like magical trans people on Twitter and going, oh, that's it. Here's the reality. They're being crazy again. They're calling Cenk a Nazi.
Yes, they are.
Oh,
They're
that's
looking
probably
for
what part
any
of this.
excuse.
Yeah, I mean,
that,
people.
But then stop.
It's probably
giving
like
them excuses, which is the
Twitter
point you
stuff.
started with.
Okay.
Thank you, Vex, too. I'm making OnlyFans. Listen, I appreciate that you think people would want to see my OnlyFans. I'll take that as a compliment, friend. Thank you kindly. But oh no, you made me lose my train of thought to what they were talking about. Oh no. Let's see if we can back it up a little bit. Oh no, we got the lag again. I'm joking. I don't look like you, but I think you're a cool guy. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I've been told I look like a lot of people. So when you said that, I was like, maybe. I don't know. Some people look like me. If you look like the dude, I guess, where you find on people, that would be nice. You know what? I can't say as I agree with you, VX. Can't. Just not on board. Sorry, I don't think I'll follow through for you. Well, people tell me I look like people a lot. So if I do look like a friend of yours, then you know. That happens. I wanted to go back 10 seconds. This is what YouTube is doing to me. It's rough. It's bad times. Well, I'm glad y'all are here having a good time. Don't forget, hit that follow button.
They're being crazy again. They're calling Cenk a Nazi.
Yes,
right. We're talking about people calling Cenk a Nazi on Twitter. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, people go crazy on Twitter, especially lefties on Twitter. They call... Oh, my God. I get mad at it, too. I don't even go on Twitter... I don't have a Twitter or anything like that. I guess it's X now. And I get annoyed with what I've seen from Twitter about people calling people Nazis for like not being on board with the most insular left wing thing. Yeah, he probably does get called a Nazi a lot on Twitter, and it's undeserved. He's very much not. I am not in fact trans VX, but thanks. I appreciate your confidence in me. Thank you kindly. I hope you're right. I'll put it that way. But no, I am not trans myself. Yeah, let's keep going. Just an ally. Oh no, the lag. I appreciate you say I'm a cool guy. I try to be chill around here. Try to help everyone have a good time.
And they're looking for any excuse.
Right,
I agree with that.
But
then stop giving them excuses, which is the point you
started. On the one hand, I don't want to pause so that doesn't happen. On the other hand,
there's a major disagreement here. We are at odds,
but we're not at odds. You say don't talk about it. I say don't talk about it.
Well, except you are talking about it.
You say you're against the bill. I say I'm against the bill.
But
you're for trans rights. I'm for trans rights. But my point is
but the difference is the same people that call you transphobic also called me transphobic all the fucking time. The difference is I don't change my perspective at the end of the day.
And this is, by the way, such a problem on the left. Oh my God, it needs to stop. Like, the goal is to get good things to happen. If you're scaring people off because you're calling them a Nazi because they're not on board with everything you believe, there's no shortage of people who like, I used to be a lefty, then someone said I was an asshole, and now I changed all my positions, and I actually want to do genocide now. Like, that person is so common, and it's so preventable. Just be chill. Just be like, all right, we disagree on some stuff. Hey, maybe we can talk about it. Or maybe it's not a big deal. Some of the stuff, like, man, some of the things I've seen people disagree about are stuff like, oh, are you like an anarcho syndicalist, or are you complete are you an anarchist, or are you a communist? Like, the differences between these things are real, don't get me wrong, but they're like so far away from where we are that we'll all be dead before that debate can even begin. Why like people go out of their way to ostracize people who ostensibly want to make the world better because they disagree with you on something that does not matter, or that we can like talk it out? Like someone like Cenk, who's politically a trans ally, objectively speaking, that he's being gets called a Nazi because like he maybe has some questions about the sports stuff is absolutely insane. Like what do you do with it? Like the encouragement is like maybe okay, if this isn't actually good, maybe I should do something else. Like I don't know, like he's doing good things. Let him do it. Yeah. And I don't watch a lot of TYT, but I do know that like he's politically on board for trans rights.
Because who fucking cares? You just do what you think is right, and you keep pushing. And I think that it's very dangerous and very scary when you get moved by your base of support that you have worked tirelessly for 20 years and like building and solidifying, turning on you and saying you're right wing now. I think that
didn't happen though. Like I agree with you. It's 11 people on Twitter, so our audience is just as gigantic as it's always been. So you can go ahead and cry about it.
Okay, so he's aware that it's a small contingency.
So I'm not worried about that, Haas. I gave it as a small example, and defund the police is a much larger example.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second.
Progressives are getting pigeonholed by mainstream media and Republicans as radicals, when in reality we are the overwhelming majority of the country. So we need to focus and get our messaging
that is
right.
True.
And that's why
if it weren't for the Electoral College, Republicans would never win an election again. Just polling results, it's very, very clear. There are way more Democrats than there are Republicans, way more progressives, way more people who are on board for things progressives want. Obviously, like, it depends a lot about how the polling is done. I know one common thing is, like, when polled, people are mostly on board for universal health care, except that's only if you phrase it that way. If you phrase it differently, they're often not on board. So I know there's some difficulties there, but like, yeah, left leaning, at the very least, left leaning in America, positions are far more popular than right leaning ones. Were you able to get into Discord, by the way? It's not Jaden.
That's why looking at a couple random people and greatly emphasizing the impact that they have, and even attributing attributing like the mainstream media's perspective shift on progressives, when you and I both know that they never fucking gave a shit, and they don't even need like a couple of random trans people to call you a transphobe to like justify their hatred for progressives.
Okay, let's go to a larger.
There's no reason to talk about that now. As far as like there was one other point that I wanted to make, because we were talking about state legislatures. This is really important, please. I think that a broader Republican project, and I think you'll agree with me on this, has been that they want to dismantle the power of the legislative body and then utilize the state legislatures where they know they have control due to gerrymandering and ridiculous district maps, where they can, even if they don't have popular support, even if they lose the majority of the votes, still maintain a majority in the House and the Senate, right? State House and State Senate.
It's one of the most
this is what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. And
gerrymandering, electoral
there's a
college,
secondary side to this, though, because
letting the Republicans win when they shouldn't normally.
So they've also they've dismantled the legislative body. They have pushed their power in undemocratic ways through the state legislature.
Including, but not limited to, an attempt to get a ruling in the Supreme Court that would basically allow legislators to basically be elected without winning their election. I don't remember the exact details of it, so I don't want to be like super specific, but as I understand it, it's like basically the ability to like reject the results of an election if they don't like it was more or less like a thing. Or no, it was like to appoint people who will decide who becomes a legislature, which basically makes it gets rid of like the voting process, you know. There are a lot of openly very anti-democratic efforts by the Republican Party, and like partly it's because that's the only way they can stay in control, and partly because they just don't like democracy very much.
And then also solidified that power and codified it by court packing, right? So they have this very open project within the Federalist Society, all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, where they have hyper-reactionary judges that they've placed in positions of power through appointments, right? So when you do that, there is no need for a democratic process, which is precisely the reason why saying that these Republicans are actually acting out the desires of their psychotic, bloodthirsty base when they're pushing for, trans bills that are getting passed in every single state legislature is objectively false. Why is it objectively false? Because one, Republicans have never cared about their base. Let's be fucking real. They just use the culture war issues as a way to like draw up support. But in reality, they don't really give a shit about what the base wants. If they did, then they would have never in a million years allowed the Roe v. Wade decision to be overturned, because that was a much better way to just keep dangling in front of the most active base of support they have, white evangelical Protestants, and never actually push to actively dismantle Roe v. Wade and completely criminalize abortion in red states. That's why they have a major fuck up right now.
I mean, they've been trying
from their own
they
success.
can't really get it done.
So I don't think that pointing to state legislatures and bills that they've passed to say, no, there is actually a decent amount of support for anti-trans legislation from the Republican base of support is correct, especially when all signs point to the opposite. At the national party level, the Republican Party is currently going through a crisis, an identity crisis. They have capitulated to incredibly bloodthirsty, psychotic fucking culture warriors for so long that they end up leading like Ron DeSantis, pushing for objectively unpopular bills, okay, by utilizing.
I think this is a little bit of like a ramification of the Trump campaign, because Trump leaned a lot on the extremists of right-wingers, leaned a lot into rallying up the Nazi base. Let's be honest, right? Like alt-right, the Venn diagram of alt-right and Nazi, it's not very dissimilar from a circle, and that's who he built his base on. Well, now they're louder, and now they feel they should be catered to. But the problem is, what they want is very unpopular. You know, most people don't want that thing. Now, of course, they don't really want this to be up for discussion, right? Alt-right tends not to be particularly democratic. They want what they want, irrespective of what other people want. But we do ostensibly live in a democracy, and at least in the broad strokes, you do need at least some support. And this is why you have people like DeSantis who leaned into it even further, even more explicitly than Trump did. And he's just not popular. It's just not working because most people are not on board for this. This is slightly encouraging, to be sure, but it's also kind of telling of like, well, you know, the people don't really want these extreme things like Hasan is pointing out. Like, people don't really want as fervently these anti-trans bills as the politicians make it seem.
The state legislatures.
Oh, now we're back.
And
to
then
no
suffering the consequences on the perception in the national party.
Yeah. So, look, again, there's a lot I agree with, but let's break it down one by one. So it can be both, Haas. It can be that, yeah, they've done the gerrymandering. Gerrymandering has done most of the work for them, and it made their seats pretty much impenetrable. So if the Republican legislators do something, it doesn't necessarily mean that the voters of that state want it, for sure, right? But it can be that also the vicious end of the Republican base does want it. And the polling indicates that they...
I mean, I can agree with that, right? Like, there definitely are the people who want what these legislators are pushing and more. There are a lot of people... I mean, a lot of why people were disappointed with the Trump presidency who were Trump supporters was that he wasn't extreme enough. He didn't actually do the fascist things that they wanted him to do. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, Trump is an opportunist. He's interested in himself and will get him what he wants. And if that means fascist stuff, sure, but he's not ideologically committed to it, I don't think. Now, that's not a exoneration of him, right? He's still willing to do fascist stuff. No one should be willing to do fascist stuff. But, you know, a lot of people were pretty disappointed with him because he didn't go far enough. And so, like, Cenk's right in that regard. However, while that group exists, understanding where they are in the proportions of of voters in both Republican and in general, I think is really important here. I don't know what those numbers are like. If that group is a pretty small minority, even in the Republican Party, then we treat this conversation a lot differently than if that base that he's referring to is like 60% of the party and the rest are just hangers on. It's kind of hard to know, and I can't really comment too much past that for not having that information. This is one of the things that's actually kind of cool to me about conversations and debates between people who are a lot more educated on this matter, is that you will have these moments come up where what my response to this is and whether I agree with you or not has a lot to do with information that we just need. I know we don't see a lot of that on the internet. A lot of times it's just like screaming at each other and like trying to find the things that the other person doesn't know how to answer or whatever else. But you know, these aren't people who are trying to put on a show as much as they are trying. I mean, they're putting on a show literally, but like they're really talking to each other and they're trying to talk to each other honestly and not just to like score internet points. And so you'll have stuff like this come up where that's kind of important. Now, I don't know that they'll necessarily diagnose how important that is, or maybe they both have an awareness of what that information is, and I'm just the one person who doesn't. But it's kind of interesting how that comes up, right? Like, yeah, you should need information to inform your positions, and it's nice. It's kind of refreshing to see it on the internet where, whoo boy, do people not care about what is true or not. And what reality actually looks like.
They do want it, right? And so, but the larger point here is...
I don't agree. I don't think they're...
No.
I don't think they're...
Hold on. Let me be clearer. Because it depends. If you say, do you hate trans people? The answer is no in the polling. For American
most people would say no.
They are in favor of trans rights.
Most people might be on board with
They're in favor of treating trans people in the same exact way about employment, health care, etc.
That's what I was talking about, like how you phrase the polling question is really important.
2/3 of the country is progressive, okay? So when you go to ask them about bathrooms, no. When you ask them about the military, no. These people are willing to give their lives for this country, and you don't want them? What kind of a monster are you? So the American people are on our side on all those things. That's why they had to go digging for this stupid high school sports thing, right? And on that, I've seen the polling, and it's over 70% of Americans are on the side of banning them, right? Now,
see, that's the kind of information I was looking at, and I would trust Cenk to accurately convey that information. I'm sorry, Cenk, that I've paused on such an unflattering phrase. But yeah, like I would trust that information is probably correct. Like he's the kind of person who would do the research and would tell you an accurate number to what he's seen. But that also really informs where he's been coming from. Of like, you know, maybe overwhelmingly this isn't like super popular. Like, yes, trans rights are really popular, but with this thing specifically, perhaps artificially because it's been screamed about by every right-wing politician that has a platform for just months and months and months, even years on end now. You know, there are those people who are interested. Like you said, 70%, possibly of Republicans, possibly I don't know the details of the statistic he's citing, obviously. You know, there are people in support of it. We have to take that into account. That is really relevant.
I'm on the other side. I'm with the 30%. And leave the kids alone, right? It doesn't matter if your daughter was going to break a record or whatever. Just calm down. Stop checking the genitals of kids. You're sickos. Leave them alone, right? Yeah. So
definitely.
But having said
Stop
that,
checking the genitals of kids.
What they're trying to do, Hasan, this is the oldest trick in the book, and they did this back in the 1980s.
A contentious position in American politics.
They dig until they find something unpopular, and they make Democrats or the left wing attack them on it. So, for example, flag burning. So flag burning, everybody knows it's protected by the First Amendment. They know it's protected by the First Amendment, but they want to make it seem like we hate America and
Am I alone on this? I've never gotten why it's a big deal. Like, it's, for one thing, it's been done for so long now that it's not shocking or new anymore, right? Like the flag burning case that happened, I don't know exactly when it was, but I'm pretty sure it was decades ago, at a minimum. Like, I don't know, is it really shocking anymore? Is it like, why is it a big deal? Like, if anything, it's just like, that's kind of tired and played up. It'd be more shocking if you did something like burn a copy of the Constitution. Obviously not the original one, but like, you know, if you get a print from a store or whatever, like, that'd be a little more shocking because there's a political message behind that. Now, that's also something someone on the right is more likely to do than the left, but still, like, at least it's different. I just don't get why people get all up in arms. I don't know, maybe they're just... I mean, I guess it's the snowflakery of the right, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, anyone in chat can let me know if you disagree, but I just never understood why it was like that shocking. Even before I knew there was like a case about it, I was just like, okay, and it's a flag, okay? Like, I don't know, if I burned my T-shirt, would that make a difference? It's the same basic thing. I'm just burning some cloth. I guess it's like there's something to do with what the flag represents, of course. But like, I don't know. Maybe other people are more attached to the flag than I am. For me, I don't know. It's just a flag. It's just a thing countries have. It's not even like it used to be where your flag was like the battle standard or whatever. This is how you know whose side people are on in a in a fight or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's a flag, I guess. Like, yeah.
Hate
I
the
don't know. It's
American
just not that
flag,
important to me.
and we all want to burn it. So they contrive this bullshit issue. No one's burning the American flag. It's happened like twice in the last 20 years, and then the Democrats can't help but say, well, it is a First Amendment issue. You can burn the flag.
Yeah.
And they go, aha, you unpatriotic assholes, right? So my point is the same point you're making, which is don't fall for that trap. So just say, hey, we disagree on this. Move on.
You're saying don't fall for that trap and don't even defend it, or don't even. I'm saying
defend on the bills, because when there's a bill, you have to defend.
Yeah,
but I think I'm mostly agreeing with Cenk here. The
super
only
aggressive.
disagreement I have is that like he's the one who's making it such an issue, right? Like, because remember, we're talking about the transport stuff, and that was the first iceberg that Cenk said that the progressives in the U.S. have ahead of them. Like, that was the first thing he felt was important to talk about. He implied earlier that the second thing is defund the police, which I think is more of an issue, but it's kind of weird that those are the two things and that the first of them is the transport stuff. Most of what he's saying I agree with, of like, it's really not a big deal. We probably shouldn't let the conversation be controlled to this topic. And the big thing is to oppose the bills where Republicans are trying to get adults to inspect the genitals of minors. That's bad. We should have opposed that stuff. All of that is completely agreeable, completely 100% on board. But Cenk, you brought up this topic, right? You were the one who felt that this was more important to talk about than defund the police, and those two things more important to talk about than literally anything else, you know? And I think that's the issue Hasan's trying to get to. It's also kind of interesting to see a debate of people who are, for the most part, in agreement, I think. We don't see that very much. We often see, like, from the extremes of disagreement. But for the most part, these people are on the same wavelength of, like, yeah, trans rights, good. Bathroom bills, bad. Genital inspections, bad. It seems like the disagreement is about, like, political focus and the focus of conversation, which is reasonable, but like, I don't know. It's not that extreme, you know. This is what I mean. Like, at the end of the day, they're gonna go home and just be like, "All right, love you, man. I'll catch you next time." You know, like, and I like that. I like that. It's important to have conversations. You know, we so often see like the really contentious things. Like, it's important to have good relationships with people, even when you disagree on stuff. I don't think I see eye to eye on everything with literally any of my friends. It'd be weird if I did.
What the Republicans
but we can talk about stuff.
Chelsea Manning has a question for you. Q for Cenk. Is it possible that trans people are reacting the way we are because we hear people make these talking points, and the next thing we know, people are saying, this is why I had to become a conservative time and time again? And that right-wing slant is true for the likes of Dave Rubin and many others, even including like former TYT people. I think that's where a lot of people are defensive when they hear you.
I'll let him finish.
When they hear you talk about this, or when they hear people fall into the trap of like jumping on every single non-issue that ultimately turns into discourse, like bonus holes or whatever the fuck, like some psychotic weirdo British person.
What is he talking about? All right, he's like so off topic that he's talking about something else that I don't even know what he's talking about. The question is like, I don't know. I find it like a good point and also not. Like, yes, there are some number of people who are like, who look at this and like, that's why I became a conservative. And what the questioner was talking about of like, look at this, like, I'm not sure what they mean by it. So the specific thing of like what people cite as the reason to become a conservative, but obviously the fewer conservatives, the better. Conservatives want pretty bad things for people in general in this country in specific and whatever else. Um, but the like specific reference to Dave Rubin, I think, is a little faulty, just because like it's pretty clear. It was clear at the beginning, but more clear now that Rubin was always a grifter. Like he was, it was always an act that he was like some wannabe liberal. Like he's very clearly selling his soul for his career or whatever. Like he would interview Nazis and not argue with them that much. Like he would just let them talk, and like platform literally, Lauren Southern, Richard Spencer, people who were literal Nazis, and not really push back. I think he knew what he was doing. I don't think his story about like how I left the left is authentic in any way. We see this a lot. There's a constant stream of these people who are pipelines to the right by pretending to be on the left, but calling out the problems that they see, and then the next thing you know, they're like an ultra fascist or whatever. And there are a lot of these people. We saw this like we said with Dave Rubin. This happened with Tulsi Gabbard. A lot of people who were Tulsi supporters were like libertarian types, and now she's like, oh, I'm just a conservative, and like she never really argued for left-wing position. Literal Nazis liked her while she was a Democrat. I heard from like, what was it, Mike Enoch was a fan of her. Maybe I might be mistaken. It might have been a different Nazi. I listened to a lot of these kinds of debates, so but we saw that with Tulsi Gabbard. For those of you who are aware who these people are, we see this with Haas, another streamer, with Jackson Hinkle, Caleb Maupin. We see this with Jimmy Dore. A lot of people are like this, where the way they pull you in is making it seem like they're, liberals, and then they move you to the right. Even the Gamergate crowd did this to some extent. Sargon of Akkad used to call himself a classical liberal, but the guy's a fascist and an ethno-nationalist. It's just there's a constant wave of there's like constantly these waves of people popping up that are ostensibly on the left, or at the very least liberal, and shunt their audience to the right over time, and at a certain point they cross the threshold where they claim they're just a conservative now. It's constant. And so like, while the questioner calls herself Chelsea Manning, but isn't Chelsea Manning still imprisoned? I don't think. I can't imagine it's actually her. Like, it's a reasonable question, but I think that specific example, which might not have come from the questioner, by the way, might have come from Hasan. I don't actually know. I think that it kind of doesn't work, and it leads to this conversation of like, well, no, there's not really much we can do about people who grift, right? There are lots of people like that. Yeah, and so we'll see what Cenk has to say about it. Again, I'm a little uncertain what they mean about the thing that people cite as like making them conservative. Does the questioner mean like the transport stuff, or does she mean like the opposition to the transport stuff? I'm not really sure I understood the question. It was just the Dave Rubin thing that seemed interesting to me. And of course I paused for way too long, so YouTube's going nuts. Oh man. Oh, YouTube.
Came up with the fucking Daily Mail, right? If you are even pushing that discourse as though this is like real and applied and genuinely a threat to democracy because it's something that everyone is like forcing you at gunpoint to utilize, then all of a sudden you are a culture warrior, whether you admit it or not, because these issues are distractions and they're stupid as fuck, and that nobody should even talk about it, let alone amplify it. I'll take it one step further, though. There is one other issue here, and that is the Democratic Party. What do reactionaries do? They have no agenda, right? They have no agenda. They react and they try to claw back civil liberties. That's their goal. And if the Democratic Party is not actually pushing, okay, if the Democratic Party is not actually pushing material realities to change in a positive way and giving something to the Republicans to react to, right, to fight against, then all of a sudden that the reactionaries are leading the discourse.
I agree with him completely. Just one thing that was kind of interesting to me is the way he framed it is a way I wouldn't have thought of, and it was interesting to me on that aspect of like, well, if you're not creating something to react to be reactionary about, they'll just be reactionary about what exists, right? This is how they go, well, everything's chill, you're not trying to push for any more, so let's take away some of the rights that people have fought for, and actually gotten. That said, it's also like where I thought he was going with it which is something it sounds like he's in agreement with, but wasn't the direct point of his question, is that like a problem that lefties have with the Democratic Party is that while the Republicans are platforming on let's make the world worse, Democrats very often platform on let's keep things the same, and the people on the left are out here being like, why can't we get someone who says, hey, let's make the world better? Why is that a position that's just not really on the table? You know, why is it that we have to fight with the Democratic Party to get them to even take on something like trans rights or gay rights or whatever else, instead of them being the party that is in favor of that in the outset? This is why people, by the way, have issues with like the neoliberal types, the like J.K. Rowling-esque positions of keep the status quo. It's because there are problems in the world that we want to make better, and not all change is bad. We haven't reached the end of history. It's not all over. Things will still keep happening, and we want those things to be good things. Let's change things for the better. But a lot of the like neoliberal sentiment is just keep things as they are. Actually, this is a kind of a long-standing thing. Even MLK wrote about this. It's a very famous quote, so I'm not like, this isn't like, oh, I'm so smart for knowing this. I am in fact an idiot. But he was noting that the white moderate prefers peace to justice. And yeah, we shouldn't. We should prefer justice. And with justice will come peace. But just because like things are, you know, calm because no one's agitating for their liberation, doesn't mean things are good. People are suffering. We got to do something about that. So yeah, like this is why I don't like the Democratic Party. This is why I think we deserve better than Joe Biden, because we need better than what we're getting. We need people actively trying to make the world better with their policies. And there are people like that. There are people like that. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to seem doomer about this. There are a lot of people who are trying to make the world better. I just wish it was more thoroughly a platform position of the ostensibly left-leaning party in this country. You know, and I wish it was less of a fight. You know, it's something like when we had our interview with Calvin, if you remember, the guy with Pico, California, he was mentioning that, like, you know, renters' rights is a huge problem, and every single member of the California legislature has received money from these like landlord organizations. Every single one. It's bipartisan to be opposed to renters' rights. That's a problem. I really wish it were more thoroughly the case that you could reliably look at a Democratic candidate and say, yeah, they're not going to be in favor of like making landlords' lives better. They're going to be trying to make renters' lives better. That said, it's also an example of people trying to do good work. Pico, California does a lot of good work. That's their job. That's their whole thing. And so, yeah, I always get worried when I go on like complaining like this, that I get kind of doomer about it, that it seems hopeless. It's not. There are things to be done. There are a lot of people trying to make the world better. We just need them to have more ability to make the world better.
Yeah. And that is the problem, which is why whenever issues like this come up, because listen, I have a very dynamic stream. People come in here all the time. They say, a million different things, and they want
And
me
you
to
can see
address
that
it.
in his chat zooming by. Oh boy, there's so many people in this chat.
Or they want me to talk about
I
it.
mean, he's a
I
massive
am very
streamer, so it's not surprising.
terse, very strict about, like, whenever someone comes in and they're like, address what Anna said or address what Cenk said, I'm like, no, fuck off. I don't care. Shut the fuck up. We're talking about real issues. Okay? So,
But by the way, that's almost exactly what we said, and everybody called us Nazis. So not
And they
everybody,
shouldn't,
those
like,
folks.
yeah.
So
I mean,
look, guys. First of all,
the people at TYT, whatever your disagreements with them, and I have disagreements with them on occasion. I don't watch them that much, but like the things I've seen, sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't. No matter what your disagreement, they're definitely not Nazis. They're very, very far from Nazis. They're very progressive. They're just, things. Not everyone. People get things wrong. I don't know what to tell you. People get things wrong, and people have disagreements, but they're for the most part. They are for the most part agreeable, and very, very much not Nazis, not fascists, not right wing, not conservative. They have, like, everyone has some things that they'll like have right wing ish positions on, but by and large, they're pretty left wing.
Let's just be clear on everything, okay?
Further left
So
than the
number one,
Democratic Party.
I fight for
usually.
trans rights. I have for 21 years when no one else was. So if you don't like it and you don't believe it, that's up to you. You can do whatever the hell you want, okay? So, and I just told you all my positions, which are actually 99% identical to the most extreme trans right activists, right? So we have a microscopic difference. So somebody asks me about it, I say it once, I'm done with it. I'm done with it. And then a giant pylon starts because people want clout. They're like,
I wonder if what's happening here is they're both getting the sense that the other is doing the thing they're taking issue with. Maybe I'm getting the sense from what he was just saying. Maybe Cenk just wanted to mention the trans sports thing and then move on, spend 2 seconds on it and no more, and then. But Hasan, noticing that he put it first as like the first iceberg in the way, wanted to talk about it, and so to Hasan, it seems like Cenk was disproportionately prioritizing this issue because he made it seem like the first problem that's in the way, and it's like one of two big issues. So I agree with him on that. And then from Cenk's perspective, maybe it seems like, well, we've been talking about this for 20 minutes, and I wanted to spend 2 seconds on it. You're the one making a big deal out of it. And I kind of see where he's coming from. I wonder if that's what's happening. And there's not even really a disagreement. I hate when this happens, and it happens all the time. And I don't want to blame anyone for it because everyone does this. I just hate it because it's counterproductive when people who are who actually agree are arguing against each other. And it can happen, like, if I'm right about what happened here, that's what's going on. They actually completely agree 100% on all of it. But it seems like the other one is in disagreement. It happens. Miscommunications occur. I just hate when it comes up because, like, we agree. Why are we fighting? That said, I agree with Hasan a little bit more, though, in that, dude, you said there are two big problems on the horizon, and the first one was the trans sports thing. Is it? I don't think it is, and it seems like you're putting disproportionate emphasis on it just by putting it in those terms. And I think that's more reasonable than like, well, why are we talking about this for 20 minutes when I wanted to just mention it and move on? I was like, well, because of the importance you gave it in the context of what you were saying. I will say I don't know very much about either of these guys, but my opinion of both of them has improved in this conversation. And that's something that we, like, I think it's important to note, because we so often on the internet, you see people arguing, you're like, this guy's a fucking idiot, and we just, like, you think worse of them. You can think better of people too when you hear from them, and it's important to note when that happens and just be like, okay, like, that's some good stuff. We heard positive things from this person. Shouldn't always be so negative, Positivity in the world is always nice. Like the title of Cenk's book, which I have forgotten, but I remember was very optimistic. I appreciate the optimism, and I hope he's right I hope he's right to be optimistic.
Oh, no, he's not as good as me. He's not as pure as me. He's a right-winger. He's a Nazi.
Oh my God,
so
yes,
I'm like,
the purity
I ignore it. and then
goddamn
they just
nightmare.
keep going. And
So-
I don't give a shit. They could do whatever they want. But then don't pretend that I brought it up. No, you brought it up.
Well,
and you made it
in
a
this
giant
case,
issue.
you brought it up,
and
Cenk.
you're the one hurting
But
the progressive cause and the
we're
trans
talking about
rights
multiple
cause.
things at once.
We win on every goddamn issue on
I guess
trans
now the
rights.
rant at the beginning
Why
makes
are
more
you
sense.
going and dying on the hill that no one agrees with you on? You're going to ruin trans rights on other issues.
Okay.
We're going to lose because you're being so extreme.
So I partially agree and partially disagree, right? Like, on the one hand, no, we're not gonna like lose on trans rights stuff because people want to push back against like the trans sports thing, right? But the problem of purity testing and infighting on the internet left, because these people, like, I don't know, I don't think this really happens outside of Twitter, but maybe I'm wrong. I guess I guess that will be the invitation for people to show up in my comments section to call me a Nazi. They can prove me wrong. But like it's a problem, right? Cenk's right. For 21 years, according to him, and I believe his account on this, he's been fighting for trans rights. He's definitely not a Nazi, and like he's definitely not anti-trans. Even here, the most anti-trans sentiment that we've gotten from him is being politically in favor of trans rights. And like, if you take that in isolation, you could maybe extrapolate not ideologically on in agreement with some of the stuff we've encountered here, like my belief that yes, trans people are the gender with which they identify. Gender is a social construct. It's not really that important, so on and so forth. Maybe he doesn't believe all that. He might, by the way, to be clear, he might. He hasn't said one way or the other here, and I don't know enough elsewhere. He might believe all that stuff. But even if he doesn't, he's actively making efforts for the political rights of trans people, which is the important thing, right? Obviously, the social acceptance is also important, and I don't want to diminish the importance of that. But like, at least he's doing a really important thing, a really important work on this. But like, of course, people on the left, there's this like aspect of how do you get social clout is to be woker than thou. And so how do you seem woker than thou? You go, oh, I find this guy who's touted as a progressive and he's said to do a lot of good stuff. Let me prove that I'm better than him by doing some purity testing and be like, well, you don't believe this thing, so that makes you basically a Nazi and I'm more woke than you. And like, it's so insidious. It's so disgusting. Like, I've met people who've, I guess maybe it's not all online, because I've met people who've complained to me about this exact issue when they were in progressive circles. And it's actively harmful towards any ends, because what do? You end up ostracizing people. And that's what you should want, right? If put yourself in the shoes of the Twitter lefty who's calling Cenk Huker of all fucking people a Nazi. That person, if they believe what they're saying, well, he's a Nazi. We shouldn't want him around. We should want to ostracize him. Okay, now you did. Where's he going to go? This is how you get people like Harlan Borisenko and a bunch of other people who are like, I showed up to a progressive space, they were mean to me. I went to a conservative space, they were nice. I'm a conservative now, and I vote Trump. And it just makes the world worse. All you've done is make the world worse. It's a problem. It's a real problem. And I'm 100% on board with Cenk about that. Now, notice though, we've shifted topic a bit. We're talking about Twitter lefties being crazy with the infighting and purity testing, when this essentially was a discussion about problems going forward for progressives, and the first one being the trans sports thing. If what you meant was the purity testing, you should have said that. You're like, you did prioritize the trans sports thing as if it's the most important thing to you. There's a little bit of like, why is this the biggest problem? I don't know. When we think back on the subject at hand, all of this seems to be like not that relevant. But of course it comes up because while it isn't a ton of people, those people are very loud on Twitter. And, TYT obviously has a Twitter account, and people tweet at them all the time and call them Nazis and fascists and whatever, and transphobes and whatever else. It's hard to ignore. You can't, I think it's unreasonable to expect a person to completely ignore it.
And then every ally you have, you're like, nope, I'm going to be more pure than them.
Yep.
So I'm going to burn their bridge down. I don't want any allies.
He's being a little
I don't have
cringe in
any
how he's
allies.
expressing it, but I agree with what he's saying.
Both of our goals are aligned and we are interested in coalition building and actually fighting for justice, okay?
Yes.
There's two different things to do here. One is try to engage in purges and try to say this purity spiral is self-defeating, which I agree with you on.
Yeah, 100%.
Or the other thing is to just stay the course and just let people chirp into the void and never give them an ounce of pushback, because why? Every single if people are looking for class,
and I'll put it to you like if you're uncertain about the purity stuff, and the people who watch me, from what I've seen, are probably not going to be in disagreement with me at this point. But all right, let's say you are, right? Let's say you think like, well, no, it's important to make sure like the people aren't actually Nazis or whatever that are working with you. There's an amount to which this can be kind of true because like the Jimmy Dore phenomenon, you don't want to like find yourself getting shifted to the right. But I'll put it to you this way, like, you know, let's say you're campaigning for housing discrimination protections for trans people, right? Maybe you're trying to get a bill passed, maybe you're protesting, whatever else. If the person next to you is an avowed, openly says they are such and has a swastika tattoo Nazi, but they're out there trying to get the trans housing protections too, what would be the problem with that? Now, of course, the big problem is that a Nazi wouldn't do that. But the point I'm trying to make is that the purity of that person's beliefs doesn't matter as long as they're doing good things. Shouldn't that be the metric? Shouldn't that be what we're looking at? This person is trying to make positive impacts on the world. I say we let him keep doing it and not really bother him about it. You should take issue when he's trying to do bad stuff in the world. When Anna Kasparian was going off about like her, I don't remember the specifics of it, so I don't want to put words in her mouth. But like there was stuff I remember disagreeing with her about that she was talking about with trans stuff, and that's for those of you who don't remember, that's Cenk's co-host of TYT. They might both be the owners. I don't really know. They are co-hosts of the show. It's the two of them, and when I had the disagreements with her about that, it's like, okay, I can understand taking issue with that because you think she's doing harm in the world. That's the problem. It's not she's a transphobe. I don't believe that. I don't believe in that essentialist thinking, and that's kind of the issue that we're falling into here. People don't say, hey, you're doing something bad. They say, hey, you're a Nazi. Well, he's not a Nazi, but they're essentializing stuff. You did one thing I don't like, therefore you are essentially bad, and that's a problem. Instead, as long as he's doing good stuff, be supportive. And when bad stuff starts to happen, that's when you're opposed to it. Now, obviously, there's an issue of like, well, maybe by that point they have too much power, whatever. Like, but the point is like, what should it matter if the person next to you trying to accomplish positive ends believes terrible things, as long as they do the good things? Someone could imagine. We can also imagine a person who, in their heart of hearts, is the most vile, disgusting person you could ever imagine. Actually, we've met that person, Daniel Hakigachi. Well, we haven't met him, but we've seen him on screen. Imagine that guy believes all the same things, but he spends his entire life trying to fight for like religious freedom and universal health care and workers' rights and renters' rights and so on, and trans rights and so on and so forth. Would it matter what he believes in his heart of hearts? I would love that guy. I would think that guy was awesome. And then I find out that he believes all these repugnant things, and it'd be weird, but like, he spent his life doing good stuff, and that's what matters. There's I think I'm paraphrasing, and I might be misattributing it. I think it was from Aristotle, but there's a sentiment of, to some level, you are what you do. And so if Cenk's doing good things, and he mostly does, I've very rarely seen him argue for stuff I disagree with, then he's doing good things, and that's what matters. And yeah, like the purity testing is such a problem. Goddamn. I know I'm like complaining. I'm spending so long on this, but I don't know. It's a real issue. I think that's the biggest issue on the horizon, not the like transports thing or defund the police. It's the purity testing. And I don't even experience directly. I've mostly just seen it. I've seen other people go through this. Seen launcher points go through this.
No, that's not a get out of here
So
situation.
here, I'll
Hasan,
tell you exactly
very
what
important
happens.
because
This is
like,
really
so many
important
people.
because you know why? So Haas, so every time we say any little thing, all the other streamers
Lindsay,
and stuff
terrible.
come in and go, oh, we're better than the Young Turks. We're better than the Young Turks. We agree with you 200%. They're such monsters. And they clutch their pearls and
he's
stuff,
complaining about Vosh,
etc. And then we go, okay, guys, but hold on. We said a tiny thing. You guys said this nuclear reaction. Okay, say another tiny thing and defend our position for like
Oh God.
3 minutes on air, right? And then another round of nukes, right? We're better than the Young Turks. We're the most pure.
Cenk,
we're the most progressive.
God damn it. Like, Cenk, you have to understand, you're in a position where any feedback you're going to receive is going to be amplified 1,000-fold more than that, than the average person. Because when I say something stupid, I have, 30 people who are going to tell me that I'm an idiot about it? You know, even if everyone in my life gets mad at me about it, like a couple hundred? But if you say something people get mad at, you have thousands of people on Twitter getting mad at you. It's just an amplification mechanism. That happens when you do good things too. Lots of people show up on Twitter to say the good stuff. Like, you have to understand, like, I don't know, he seems not to be factoring in that he's just receiving an amplified response, and that amplification isn't the fault of, like, I don't know, it's just weird, yeah.
Like, radical, radical, radical. We have to be the most radical. And if you don't believe us, then you're a Nazi. Well, and then I made it an issue. I talked about it for about a total of maybe 3 minutes in all.
I don't know what
Young
specifically
Turks,
he's talking about, but it's
and then
probably
everyone else talked about it for 200 hours.
Well, yeah,
and
because
pretended that
because Cenk, you spent 30 minutes on this stream. I've already spent an hour and a half on it. It just takes a while to respond to stuff, and I'm not the only person responding to things, right? I'm also not. I'm also like the least important responding to stuff too. Like, oh, I'm sorry, another unflattering freeze frame. But like, yes, people will spend hours and hours and hours going over it because streamer A talks about it for an hour, streamer B talks about it for 2 hours, streamer C talks about it for 30 minutes. Like, these are all different people who want to weigh in on this. It's just your visibility that's gonna happen, my dude. Like, I agree with the complaint that they shouldn't be calling you a Nazi or whatever, and like that's the problem. But yes, when you maybe step out of line is the wrong phrase, like make a mistake. When you say something that people take issue with, that disagreement is going to be amplified just because of the nature of your position. Just like the agreement is amplified, but of course, like, that's just not how humans work. The agreement and the appreciation and the people on board are going to be a lot less emotionally impactful on a person than the people screaming at you and being hyperbolic in their condemnation.
That it was us.
Okay, here's the thing that there's two different parts here. One, you've immediately ascribed to bad faith arguments to these people. You're like saying they're cloud operated.
Do.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, Cenk, some of them are arguing bad faith on Twitter or whatever, but a lot of the streamer responses are going to be pretty reasonable. I understand there's like a lot of beef. I've mentioned before, I watch a lot of Vosh, and like I know Vosh has been beefing with him and with the Young Turks, and I think that might be who he's referring to in part. Like, a lot of those arguments were taking issue with your positions, and then extend to the hyperbole of like, is there a gas leak in your studio? Because it doesn't make sense that people as smart and as progressive as you would have these positions. But like, he's acting as though, they're just going in bad faith. They're not taking issue with everything you say. Maybe you had a bad take, my dude. And like, yes, it gets amplified or whatever. But to pretend like none of it is legitimate criticism, I don't like it. And it's tough. Like, it's hard to face criticism, and it's hard to accept that it's legitimate. Just is it human?
One, that might not be the case. There might be genuine disagreements. That's number one.
Something
but
we should
at which point you think
people can be
better than them, right?
No, they could disagree.
Okay,
I don't give a shit about
but listen. But like, okay.
But okay,
even if they are bad faith,
I'm going to call them Nazis.
Okay, even if they are bad faith, right?
Okay.
Even if they're bad faith, What the fuck are you doing giving them more clout?
I don't.
No,
I don't
well, you
say
kind of
anything.
do.
No. They do 200 shows
No,
about
it doesn't matter.
and then pretend I'm the
Well,
one
they don't.
saying
It's
it.
not
doesn't
So
matter.
I gotta
200
hit. Can we
shows. It's like
agree
200
that
people
all the
do a
other
show.
like Lance or whatever the fuck their names are?
No.
Oh no, they should all shut the fuck up then. Okay, right?
Yeah,
right?
no, he just
'Cause that's
doesn't
what
like
you're
the
saying.
idea of
Why are you
criticism.
making a big issue out of it?
Because
I only said it for 1 minute. They said it for 200 minutes. Why don't
again,
they
it takes a long time to
shut
respond.
the fuck up?
Now he's just getting mad about people getting mad at him on
lose my
Twitter.
mind.
Okay, like now,
I don't
like
under-
now,
I
now
don't
I'm off of
understand
it.
what we're
Like
disagreeing about.
I was sympathetic,
so we
but like
agreed 99% on the issue,
completely,
and we agree.
but like now he's lumping in people who have legitimate criticisms, acting as though they don't, being extremely, I don't know, petulant about people having something to say. It's like, I only spent a minute on it. Why are you talking about it at all? Well, because what you said was disagreeable. That's why. Or at least ostensibly. I don't even, like, he might not even be talking about a specific thing, or he might be talking about, I don't know. This is yeah, I don't know. People have a hard time when they come under fire. And, like, the people are calling him a Nazi. Well,
I think the
that's
major-
legitimate, but some
99% that it's
people
not a
aren't.
major issue, and
Or
people are
some-
making a big deal out of it.
I think the anger that people feel towards that sort of thing inevitably
I wish they would
derives
concretize
from
what they're talking
offering any fucking light to that conversation, especially when you understand that it is just like bullshit talking points that have been focus tested and being brought up. The moment that you give it any validity, okay, and now I'm not even talking about like
Let's talk about a general thing.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm not even talking about like talking to other leftist people or like defending your positions or whatever. I'm talking about how deeply and undesirably unproductive it is to offer any amount of consideration to literally talking points that are cooked up in a fucking laboratory about
Yeah, trying to
0.1% of the
trying to
fucking
bring it back to
population.
as they do 200 shows back to back.
There are
on it?
a million streamers. And,
Are you
and
telling them?
There are a million streamers that have not only said things about you, but have said things about me as well. There's a difference between you and I, though, because no matter what happens, when people do write those things or people do say those things about me, I've learned the hard way not to give it any credence whatsoever and stay the fucking course. And ultimately, if people have made up their minds that I am a transphobic person, then that's, yeah, GG's. There's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, and that's kind of a problem too, is that there really isn't anything he can do about that. Once someone's essentialized him, that's it. They're not gonna think about it. I think we see this all the time of like someone does something, oh, you're just gonna let that transphobe get away. What? Like it doesn't. You can never change that person's mind. That once it's essential, once it's an essential characteristic. So when someone decides that Hasan, for example, is a transphobe, that's it. It's it forever, and it's worse for them and worse for him, and everyone is worse off because they've done this. And like you said, the only thing he can really do is stay the course. Well, what if he's done something like what if the position he has is legitimately one that needs to be reconsidered, one that like maybe it's incomplete, maybe it's fundamentally flawed, maybe it's something that like if he really considered it, he'd realize was a problem. I don't want to say is transphobic because I'm trying to avoid the essentialization. But if he has a bad take, essentializing him to just being a transphobe, well, now he knows he's never going to change your mind. And so, like he says, just stay the course. Don't change what you're doing. Whereas if you don't do that, if the thing that he's met with is criticism for his position because it was a bad take or whatever, maybe he can change his mind on that if that's something he needs to change his mind on. Or maybe the person who would have essentialized him and instead discussed with him, maybe you can change your mind. But once you just say like he's a transphobe and move on, like now they're stuck and it's bad. But at the same time, he's got a point. Stay the course as far as the good work you're doing. Maybe don't spend your time on that. Like, I don't know, maybe don't let it consume you. That's difficult, and it's something that's easy for me to say because I am not subject to the level of notoriety and the level of vitriol that's pointed at them. I may never know what it's like for Cenk and Hasan to receive
That if
negative
people think that
feedback
I'm
from their
bad
audiences.
on racial issues, or if I'm
Like thousands and millions of people, maybe not millions, but like tens and hundreds of thousands of people flooding in to tell you how terrible you are. It's easy for me to say, having not experienced that, like, maybe you shouldn't let it consume you. But I think a lot of the onus is of the people who are, you know, doing that. Like, and of course, like, even if you get like 100,000 messages of people disagreeing with you, and two of them call you a Nazi, and the other, like, two of them call you a Nazi, 90% of them say, "Hey, that's a bad take," and then 1% of them are like explaining the problem. It's hard. I imagine it's difficult to see the people who are trying to give constructive feedback through, instead of the people calling you a Nazi. It's a difficult problem. It's like a social problem of the internet, and it ended up it ended up disrailing this conversation. All right. Well, YouTube has decided we had it going before, right? It was like I'd unpause or I'd start playing the video
misogynistic
and it would just
person,
play immediately. I
then
don't know.
there's nothing that I can change about their perspective. They are entirely too malleable, which is why I have assumed positions on so many things that the American population considers radical, whether it be foreign policy and what I believe in, or whether it be trans issues, even if it's something that Americans across the board consider to be like unpopular. The reason why I can stay the course in spite of that pushback is because I fucking ignore it, because I know that it is unproductive. That's it.
Yeah.
And the second
problem
thing I
is,
will
of course,
say,
like,
and this
now
is
he's also lumping things in. There is an amount of it that is productive. By the way, a lot of the pushback that can't. Well, maybe I shouldn't say a lot. There's some amount of pushback that Hasan gets, that Cenk gets, that everybody gets, that is legitimate, and like, well, that should probably be listened to. But of course, sifting that out is kind of difficult. And another part of the problem of the people who call Hasan a transphobe, or Cenk a Nazi, or a transphobe, or whatever else, is that, like, it drowns out the voices of people who are trying to actually be like, hey, I think you could do better about this.
something that I try to talk to my audience about quite frequently, is that being a progressive is not about having black people or trans people hype you up all the fucking time.
True.
There are going to be plenty of moments where you are going to be at odds with activists. There is going to be plenty of moments where you have disagreements with the marginalized communities that you claim to speak on behalf of. Okay.
And well, I agree, but I'd rephrase that. You're not trying to. He'd probably agree if I corrected his phrasing here. You're not speaking on behalf of these communities. You're speaking in favor of of them, right? Like, you're not saying the black community says this or the trans community says this. You're saying their lives would be improved if we did this, right? Like, you're advocating for improvements of their lives, not speaking for them. I mean, maybe he'd disagree, but I'm pretty sure he would agree with that correction.
Ultimately,
it's just, people misspeak.
It's not even about a logical conclusion to those problems. It's about being empathetic, right? That's at the heart of the matter.
So let's
being empathetic.
Let's do a super important distinction, okay? Because and I don't think I made a good enough case for this distinction, and I want to be way clearer. There's a difference between.
By the way, I do this all the time. What he just did, and it's so great to see people do it, is realizing, you know what, I wasn't clear about something. Let me make clearer what I meant to say, and like, hopefully that helps us understand, like, both where I'm coming from and like where we agree or disagree.
Randos in the world.
It's a great thing to do, and I recommend everyone to do.
Whether they agree with me or disagree with me.
Pay attention to see if people have understood what you're trying to say.
Or they heard the wrong thing about me.
By the way,
or they have heard the right thing and they still think this guy's a Republican and I hate him. No problem. Okay, and media figures, streamers, etc. Those guys are largely scorpions, and it's because the incentives and disincentives create scorpions. Because when you attack someone else, you get into the algorithm loop on YouTube, mainly YouTube, but in some other places as well, and you try to get attention. so they don't even know. I hope they don't know, a lot of them, that they're doing it on purpose. I hope they're not doing it on purpose, but probably some of them are, right? But they think like, no, this is really important. I have to correct the record by attacking the Young Turks. Oh, look at that. My views went up. What a wonderful coincidence. I'm going to do it again and again and again. And this is not just about
this. I've seen a lot of people make this argument. It feels a lot like coat posting about like, oh, people must be doing it because it's good for their numbers or whatever. Like, don't get me wrong. I am watching this because like these are two pretty important media figures on the internet, especially on the online left. So like, yeah, that's a relevance or whatever. But like, a lot of the people who are taking I know some number of people that have taken Cenk to task on their platforms are not doing it for views. They're doing it because they have legitimate thoughts, like they have thoughts on your position. And a lot of people are just, I mean, that's why I'm here, right? Like I'm not just saying things because disagreeing with you will boost my viewers or whatever. I'm disagreeing with you because I disagree with you. And a lot of people are doing that. But like the implication that people are just like, oh, well, if I just keep talking about the Young Turks, my numbers will go up and up and up and up and up. Like, I don't think that's fair to a lot of the to the people who are trying to make. Because remember, these are also like different groups of people. The people who are calling Cenk a Nazi are not the people who are making repeated videos about him, right? Like the people who are calling him a Nazi are on Twitter or in YouTube comments. They're not streaming. They're not making videos. And the people who are, I hope, are making reasonable arguments. Oftentimes they're not, but like, I don't know. I think it's pretty disingenuous to just be like, nah, they're only saying it because it makes their numbers go up. Like, if that were the case, why are they harping on this thing and not literally everything you say? Why not just turn their stream into, I watch TYT and shit on you the whole time, right? If that were actually the case. Maybe that's a stream idea. Maybe that's how we get all the viewers.
Radical
Our
left.
numbers will
crazy?
go up.
No
we'll
way.
just watch the Young Turks
right-wing
and
starters,
get mad
why
at
does
everything
Steven
for no
Crowder dress
reason.
up as me?
Yeah,
right?
I was about to say, listen,
right?
Listen, but you're.
So why did Jimmy Dore attack me like a nut job?
Well, because Jimmy Dore is
Sargon of
not
Akkad go
a
back
lefty.
like 15
Partially
years?
because
why did Sam Harris? Why did all of them?
Wait, hold on.
attack
You're
up?
just listing a bunch of right wingers. What? Hold on. Yeah, people on the right are going to take issue with you because you're a progressive. What the fuck? Jimmy Dore pretends to be a liberal, but he's very much not. Like, his arguments are always. I'm not going to get into it. But Sargon of Akkad is not even. Doesn't even pretend to be a liberal anymore. Who else did he say? I've blanked on who else he was talking about. But like everyone he mentioned was a right winger. Yeah, of course they get mad at you, Cenk. What the hell? When your opponents get mad at the things you say, that's what you should expect. Just be like, sweet, I'm doing something right. The people who want to make the world worse hate me. Like, what? Maybe, well, as long as it's loading, maybe we can go back 5 seconds and hear the people he said. I forgot all of them because I was so shocked and I was formulating my response. But like, I think Jimmy Dore is the only person there that even pretends to be a liberal. The rest of them are very much not. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's really weird. Like, if I say, trans people shouldn't be it should be illegal to discriminate against trans people in terms of like housing and employment and whatever else. And then and then a Republican got mad at me about that. I don't know. I wouldn't find that like upsetting or confusing.
Like 15
partially
years.
Partially
why
because
did Sam Harris? Why did
Sam
all
Harris
of
is
them attack
also
us?
like, I guess he pretends to be on the liberal.
Partially
but,
because
like,
you
YouTube,
respond.
We're the largest.
Partially because you respond. It's called getting farmed. Trust me, I know from personal experience what that's like.
Maybe it's a thing.
For a very long time, I got farmed like a motherfucker. Okay, because just like you, perhaps because I am also as stubborn as you are, I couldn't shut the fuck up anytime there was like any error. Okay, whenever someone said, "This is what Hasan believes" or whatever the fuck, I immediately rushed to correct the record, thinking that there was good faith discussion to be had. Now, out of the people that are actually criticizing you, there are people who I do like, who I do appreciate. I'm not gonna get into that part of the conversation because I feel like that's gonna blow a lid in this. It's gonna make you blow a gasket. But the reality is that ultimately, if you want to have a productive, if you want to have a productive and successful coalition, you just can't stress that shit out. Okay. You can't.
No, I'm good with
even
it.
Even if
Look,
they
I
say
was super clear. You like what we're saying, you come to the Young Truce. If you don't like it and you want super radical weirdos, there's like a million shows for you.
That's what you're doing. Like you're casting everyone else in a bad light. Don't even talk about it. Don't even bring it up. That's
We're
it.
so
I know I've been punched in the face
like
200
Because
times,
when you
and I'm not allowed to punch back.
Exactly.
Like not
100%.
even really talking
That's what I'm
about trans
saying.
issues.
Yes, you get it. That is what I'm saying. That's what being fucking progressive is, okay? If someone on your side is punching you, you ultimately turn around and say, I don't give a fuck. It's fine, because the real motherfucker whose face I have to punch is out there that actually holds on to all levers of power. Because while we're fucking...
And don't get me wrong, that sucks. That sucks that's the position. Maybe he's right. I don't know enough about being in a position like they are. I mean, I'm not a massive media figure like they are. I'm a nobody, so I have to take it from him that he's right about the response here. But that, like, I get that sucks, right? Like, especially like some amount of it, I think Cenk's complaining about things that are completely reasonable to happen, but some amount of it, he's right. Like, if people ostensibly on your side are out there like calling you a Nazi and a transphobe as you're sitting there trying to agitate for trans rights and for the betterment of society, like, that sucks. And it really sucks that you just have to let it happen. I get it. Yeah, I don't know. But, I mean, according to Hasan, at least, that's, like, got to be what you got to do. And, by the way, if people don't like that, then stop calling him a Nazi for like, having a bad take once. Like, I don't know. It's one of the issues, like, also a thing that the right often uses, like, oh, the left just calls anyone a Nazi. And it's like, well, okay, like, a lot of the times when we do, it's because they're actual Nazis. When the left called Richard Spencer a Nazi,
arguing about
it's because that was correct. But then you give credence to that argument when you calling like Cenk Uygur a Nazi, or Hasan, or a huge number of other people.
Of your perspective on trans issues, or whenever like you choose to engage in like any kind of reactionary framing of an issue, there are actual fucking people out there who are making everyone's lives actively worse. So why the fuck would I ever care about what some dumbass fucking YouTuber has to say when Ben Shapiro is, again, stealing our fucking lunch money and doing whatever the fuck is necessary to keep propagandizing every fucking awful position that makes people's lives worse.
Right. And at a minimum, like, maybe the compromised version of what Hasan is suggesting is to say, like, yeah, you should keep your eyes on what's important. Ben Shapiro is much more of a problem than Twitter lefties. At a minimum, you should be spending way more of your time and effort on people like that than the people on Twitter. And maybe Cenk does, and, like, I don't know. But, you know, if anything's going to consume you, shouldn't it be fighting against the people who want to make the world worse and with the people who want to make the world better, as opposed to, well, the people keep criticizing me unfairly and I'm going to spend all my time on that. I don't know. There's a part of me that can't really get behind the full, like, you just have to ignore all of it, because, I don't know, that feels, at least on an emotional level, that's
why I fucking cover Ben Shapiro every day, by the way,
unreasonable.
you dumb cocksuckers in here who fucking think, like, oh, why does the song talk about Ben Shapiro all the time? That's why. Because he's the fucking bad guy. You will never see me fucking agree with Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder or any of those fucking bullshit charlatans out there.
I won't make you that promise. And the reason is I am hopeful for the impossible. I hope that one day I will agree with Ben Shapiro that trans rights are human rights and we should be fighting for the protection of trans people, and so on and so forth. A lot of progressive positions. I'm not going to change my opinions to agree with the things he believes, but if he changes his opinions to agree with mine, that will be wonderful, and I would very much appreciate it. The world will become that much better. Damn it, I paused for 2 seconds, and so sometimes it's been fine. I don't know, it's been very inconsistent. It's very, very strange.
Because those are the fucking bad guys. I don't give a fuck if people call me transphobic or racist or whatever the fuck. I'm not gonna stray away from my my point of view, but more importantly, and I don't think you do either, but there's this one issue that you and I have. There's one.
I've been trying to read Hasan's sweater this whole time, and it's actually kind of a banger. It says capitalism is voluntary, which was very confusing to me because Hasan's a socialist. So like, I was like sure that it had to be something ironic. It's supposed to be like a joke movie called Capitalism is voluntary, and the tagline is get bread or get dead. Yeah, it's like so voluntary how if you don't work for somebody you'll die. Yeah, very voluntary. You have a lot of choices about what you do in a circumstance like that. I figured it was being sarcastic when it said capitalism is voluntary. I just finally was able to read what it said underneath and confirm. But of course I paused, so YouTube is going to punish me. Please, we're almost done. Oh man, we really squeezed blood from a turnip out this one. This is a half-hour conversation. We've been at it for 2 hours. That's how you know I'm not content stealing.
There's one difference that you and I have. You spend entirely too much time thinking about all the people on your side who fucking hate you. Okay, who say you're bad and wrong, I mean, even if it's a misunderstanding. Don't even fucking clear it up. It doesn't matter. People will see where you are genuinely coming from when you keep saying the same shit that you're saying that you've said for 20 fucking years. That's it. Okay. A lot of people yelled at me during the fucking Hogwarts drama. There were every trans content creator on Twitter yelled at me. Okay, and said you're a fucking a piece of shit, you're transphobic. Oh, what, you can't play one fucking game that's transphobic? It was an idiotic fucking take from the jump. I said it a month in advance that this is entirely too popular of an IP. The best thing to do is not like try to do boycott. Is try to boycott this fucking IP that's completely devoid of the transphobic
I happen to agree with him, but
is making money off of it, and instead use it to fundraise or push the issue further. Everybody yelled at me.
I don't know if he did. Maybe he did. But I remember someone saying like, "Oh, if they watch me, they won't. Maybe they won't buy the game themselves," which is something. The boycott seems kind of silly to me as well. And if Hasan was out there saying like, it's too big of an IP for me to ignore, and and if he was saying like telling his audience, hey, instead of buying it, you can watch me play it, so you can get this experience of the game anyway. That also would have been good. I'm not going to say it was bad for him to play the game, but it would have been an additional good if he was also telling his audience, like, well, I'm going to play it, so you don't have to. Don't buy it. It's fine. Because a boycott proved ineffective, and it was unlikely to be effective, but something like that of like at the very least there's more of it. Like Hasan not buying the game is one person not buying the game. His audience not buying it to watch him is thousands of people, millions of people. I don't know how big his subscriber base is. He has 184,000 subscribers here on YouTube, but YouTube isn't his main deal. I'm actually surprised it's that low, even with YouTube being just kind of like extra. He's mostly on Twitch. I don't know how big his base is, but if half of them
said that was incredibly transphobic, what the fuck did I do? I shut the fuck up. I said, you guys are wrong, but it doesn't matter. History will absolve me. It did. Who gives a shit? The game fucking sucked. Right-wingers like Ben Shapiro made commentary on it, saying
laughed at the ineffective boycott.
Hasan is terrified of trans people in his own audience, and that's why he also has to capitulate to the trans people in his own audience, when if I wanted to capitulate, I would have never said anything about Hogwarts whatsoever, and I would have just stayed the course and never played it and said, yes, it's a transphobic fucking game. But I didn't do that because I'm a stubborn piece of shit. I yelled at the people, and I moved on. Is good. Many of those people who thought I was transphobic in that fucking fervor,
but it's difficult, of course, because like on the one hand,
come to the realization that they were
you have to be stubborn. You have to be stubborn with the people who are making unrealistic demands, but you also should be open to people making reasonable criticism. Like, I agree with him in this case, but in an event where I disagreed with him, I would want that he should be open to conversation. And not just stay the course, but of course the hyperbole of the internet makes it difficult.
Wrong. A lot of people don't want to admit that they're wrong, especially when tensions are fucking high. It doesn't matter. They finally quietly come to that conclusion that you were on, if they truly do believe that you are genuinely on their side. That's it. So just make your work speak for itself. You don't have to constantly fucking yell about random trans people online. And yes, that's what being the bigger progressive media person it revolves around. You have to do that. That's it.
All right, look, I'm going to take your advice. Let's move on because it's a microscopic issue.
There you go. So let's talk about defund the police now.
Okay, so the overall issue that
and before we do that,
there's two.
Okay,
I got to run
like
a 3-minute break real quick, and I'm going to pee, but you can keep going.
Now we've talked at length. Okay, we've spent a lot of time on this, so I'm not gonna try to find the. Oh my, we have to watch this. Okay, I got clickbaited. We're gonna watch this on the subsequent stream. We're not watching it today, but yeah, we spent a lot of time talking about that. Now it was the trans stuff was more interesting to me, even though they didn't end up talking about it, and I also wasn't aware of the conversation about defund the police, which I guess happened after. Ended up being mostly about like lefty infighting, but I also agree with a lot of the positions. I don't know. It was kind of interesting. I'm glad we watched it. It was less about trans stuff than I was hoping, but we saw a lot of really cool things too, right? We saw what it looks like when you're having a disagreement with someone that you mostly agree with. You know, like fundamentally, Hasan and Cenk are see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, including the trans stuff, by the way, it seems like. There's just minor disagreements, but you can have disagreements with people and you can talk about it, and it got heated. But that's okay. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It felt... I think there was useful stuff in there, even if that was a lot less... I don't know. A lot less substantive than a lot of the debates we usually go over. That said, we did watch it. We got through it. It was fun. And we found something else that we want to watch. That trans conservatives versus trans liberals. That'll be interesting. We'll come back to... Jubilee has 8.3 million subscribers. I did not realize they were that enormous. We will get to that. Probably Thursday we'll do that. Or maybe we'll do that next week. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Tomorrow, as usual, is Magic Day. So don't forget to, if you're into Magic, come in for that. Got some new people hanging out. Much appreciated. Apparently, the invite link to my Discord is invalid, even though it's supposed to never expire. I don't know. We'll fix that. But welcome to the Discord, those of you who joined. I'll get a new one in my channel description, both in YouTube and on Kick. We've got some new followers. If we get this number up, if we get to 75 followers on Kick, we will get partnered, which will be super cool. And as a reward for that, I'll make myself a truly disgusting cup of tea. So you new people who are not familiar, if we get partnered on Kick, the plan is I will make a cup of tea and I'll use salt or pepper instead of sugar. Oh, hey, Chemgal. So, tell your friends. Much appreciated the new people coming around, joining the Discord, all that stuff. Get to chatting. It's not big right now, but soon we'll get there. VX very, very kind to me, is saying that I'll be famous one day. I appreciate your optimism, and it'd be cool if you were right. We'll see how that goes. But thanks for the new people joining. Thanks for the returning people for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.